Alara Voss opened her eyes to moonlight and silence. She was lying on cold grass in the middle of a forest clearing, and she had no idea how she had gotten there. Her head throbbed. Her hands trembled as she pushed herself up. The trees around her stood tall and still, their branches silver under the full moon, and somewhere far off an owl called into the night. She looked down at her arms, searching for something without knowing what it was. Then it hit her, sharp and cold. She had no mark. In the kingdom of Veyrath Hollow, every person was born bonded to a wolf, and every wolf left a mark on the skin, a small symbol unique to each pack. It appeared at birth and never faded. Alara's skin was bare. No mark. No wolf stirring beneath her ribs the way it should have been. She felt only a strange, quiet emptiness where something ancient should have lived. Panic rose in her throat. She tried to remember how she had come to this clearing, tried to remember anything before this moment, but her mind offered nothing. No home, no family, no name that felt certain except the one that whispered itself to her now, soft and sure, Ilara. That much she knew. She heard footsteps before she saw him. A tall man stepped out from between the trees, moving with the quiet control of someone who had spent his whole life being watched and obeyed. His eyes found her instantly, and when they did, something in him went very still. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low. "I don't know," Ilara admitted. "I woke up here, I don't have a mark, I don't have a wolf." She expected him to recoil, the way she had heard whispered stories of unmarked ones being treated. Instead, the man's jaw tightened, and his eyes narrowed with something that looked almost like recognition. He took a slow step closer, studying her the way someone studies a puzzle they have waited years to solve. "I am Draven Ashcroft," he said, "king of this territory." He paused. "You should not exist, and yet here you are." Ilara didn't understand what he meant, not yet. She only knew that being near him made the strange emptiness inside her feel less like a wound and more like a held breath, waiting for something. Draven brought her back to his palace that night, ignoring the murmurs of the guards who watched her with open suspicion. Unmarked ones were rare, and the stories about them were not kind. Some believed they were cursed, others believed they were signs of disaster to come. Draven had heard all these stories too, yet when he looked at Ilara, he did not see a curse. He saw something old and folded away, like a book whose pages had never been opened. Over the next several days, Ilara stayed in the palace under his protection, and strange things began to happen. Flowers that should have withered in the cold season bloomed instead. The moonlight, when it touched her skin, seemed to bend gently around her, as if drawn to her rather than simply falling. The staff whispered when they thought she couldn't hear them, but Draven silenced every unkind word, with a look that left no room for argument. He visited her often, though he told himself it was only out of duty, only to understand the mystery she presented. But each time he sat across from her, listening to her describe the strange pull she felt beneath her skin, he found himself wanting to stay longer than necessary. She was quiet, thoughtful, and unafraid to ask him questions no one else dared to ask. She did not tiptoe around his title. She simply spoke to him as though he were a man first and a king second. "You said I shouldn't exist," she reminded him one evening, as they sat near a large window overlooking the moonlit courtyard. "What did you mean by that?" Draven considered his words carefully. Every wolf in this kingdom descends from bloodlines that were shaped generations ago, when the marking magic was first woven into our world. Every person is marked because every wolf comes from that same magic. But you have no mark, which should mean you have no wolf. And yet, standing near you, I feel something old, something my own wolf reacts to as if it recognizes an elder. Ilara frowned. "An elder?" "There are stories," Draven said slowly, "of beings that existed before the pacts, before the marking magic. Old spirits, tied to the moon itself, said to have protected this land in an age long before kings and treaties. They were called the first beasts. Most believe they vanished long ago, sealed away, or extinguished entirely." He looked at her carefully. "I believe one still exists. Inside you." The words settled over Ilara like a weight she hadn't expected to carry. She thought of the strange stillness she felt in her chest, the way moonlight seemed to answer her presence, rather than simply shine upon her. Was that truly a living thing curled inside her, older than memory itself? If that's true, she asked quietly, why don't I remember anything? Why don't I know who I am? Draven's expression softened, just slightly. I don't know, but I intend to find out, and until we do, no one in this kingdom will harm you while you remain under my protection. She believed him, and more than that, she found comfort in his steady presence, a comfort that felt unfamiliar and yet completely natural, as though some part of her recognized him too. News of the unmarked woman staying in the king's palace spread quickly, and not everyone welcomed it. Draven's own brother, Corwin, made his opposition known within days. He believed the old laws existed for good reason. The unmarked, in his eyes, were unpredictable and dangerous, capable of unraveling the balance the packs had worked centuries to maintain. He argued fiercely with Draven in private, insisting that whatever slept inside Alara needed to be contained, or destroyed, before it could awaken fully. You would risk our kingdom's stability for a woman you know nothing about, Corwin said one evening, his voice tight with frustration. She is not a threat, Draven replied evenly, and I will not condemn someone for a fear that has no proof behind it. But Corwin was not the only one who feared her. Word reached Draven that other packs, hearing rumors of an unmarked woman connected to the old First Beasts, had begun making plans of their own. Some wanted to capture her for study, others wanted her gone entirely, believing that whatever slept inside her threatened the fragile peace between the packs. Draven doubled the guard around the palace, and made it clear that anyone attempting to harm Alara would answer to him directly. Still, he could see the toll the tension was taking on her. She had grown quieter, more withdrawn, carrying the weight of being feared for something she didn't understand and hadn't chosen. One night, unable to sleep, Alara wandered into the palace gardens, drawn by something she couldn't name. The moon hung full and heavy above her, and as she stepped further into the quiet, she felt the strange pull inside her chest grow stronger than it ever had before. The runes carved into the old garden stones, ones she had never noticed before, began to glow faintly beneath her feet. Draven found her there, standing amid the glowing symbols, her eyes distant, as though she were listening to something only she could hear. Alara, he said gently, stepping closer. She turned to him, her expression caught between wonder and fear. I can feel it, she whispered. Whatever is inside me, it's waking up. Before he could respond, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, and the glow of the runes brightened. In the distance, shouts rang out. Corwin and several of his followers had chosen that very night to act, believing that whatever stirred in Alara had become too dangerous to wait for. They arrived at the garden with weapons drawn, led by Corwin himself, his expression hard and resolute. This ends tonight, he declared, before it becomes something none of us can stop. Draven stepped between them without hesitation. Stand down, Corwin. This is not the way. You would protect her over your own kingdom, Corwin snapped. I would protect an innocent life from being destroyed out of fear, Draven answered. The confrontation grew tense, voices rising, until the ground shook again, this time more violently. The runes around Alara blazed to life fully, and the air itself seemed to hum with energy. Alara gasped as warmth spread through her chest, gentle at first, then powerful, like a long-held breath finally released. She did not understand what was happening as light gathered around her, soft and silver, taking shape slowly into something ancient and vast, yet impossibly gentle. It was not a wolf, not entirely. It was something older, a presence woven from moonlight and memory, curling protectively around her, like it had been waiting centuries for this very moment to finally emerge. Corwin's followers stumbled back in shock. Even Corwin himself faltered, his resolve wavering in the face of something none of them had ever witnessed. The presence did not attack, it did not lash out in anger. It simply stood beside Alara, radiant and calm, as though its only purpose had always been to shield her. Draven felt his own wolf go utterly still, not in fear, but in something close to reverence. She is not your enemy, Draven said, his voice carrying clearly across the garden. She never was. What lives inside her is not a threat to this kingdom. It is a guardian, older than any of us, meant to protect this land in times when protection was needed most. Slowly, The light around Alara softened, and the ancient presence settled, no longer overwhelming but steady, like a quiet promise finally fulfilled. Corwin lowered his weapon, his expression shifting from anger to something more uncertain, more thoughtful. "I did not know," he admitted quietly. "None of us did," Draven said, "because we let fear speak louder than understanding." In the days that followed, word spread throughout Veyrath Hollow of what had happened in the palace garden. The unmarked woman was no longer spoken of as a curse or an omen. She became known instead as a guardian, someone connected to a power far older than the packs themselves, someone who had chosen, even without memory or explanation, to protect rather than harm. Draven stood before his court and made his position clear. The old law condemning the unmarked would be abolished. No one born without a mark would be feared or hunted again, not while he ruled. Alara stood beside him as he spoke, and for the first time since waking in that quiet forest clearing, she felt something steady settle within her. Not fear, not confusion, something closer to belonging. That night, beneath a sky washed in silver moonlight, Draven found her once more in the garden where everything had changed. The ancient presence beside her had quieted into something gentler now, no longer a burst of overwhelming light, but a soft glow that seemed to breathe alongside her, calm and familiar. "You didn't have to defend me the way you did," Alara said softly. "You barely knew me." "I knew enough," Draven replied. "I knew you carried something ancient and powerful, and yet you never once used it out of anger or fear. That told me everything I needed to know about who you are." She smiled, the emptiness she had once felt now replaced with a quiet, steady warmth. "I still don't remember who I was before that night," she admitted, "but maybe that doesn't matter as much anymore." Draven reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't hesitate to take it. "Then let's find out who you're meant to become instead," he said. Above them, the full moon shone brighter than it had in years, its light settling gently over the two of them, and the ancient glow resting quietly at Alara's side. The kingdom of Veyrath Hollow, once divided by fear, stood a little closer to peace that night, held together by an unlikely guardian who had once woken with no wolf and no mark, and a king who had chosen understanding over fear. Together, under the endless silver light, they finally stood still, no longer waiting for answers, but ready to build them together.